For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
Stupid.
Sarah.
That's my name. Don't wear it up.
When a relationship turns deadly, the aftermath can shock even the most seasoned investigators. In Winter Park, Florida, Sarah Boone and her boyfriend Jorge Torres Jr. seemed like an ordinary couple with their fair share of ups and downs. But on the night of February 24, 2020, their relationship spiraled into a nightmare that no one could have imagined. What started as a bizarre game ended in tragedy. Sarah zipped Jorge into a suitcase, claiming it was all in good fun. But Jorge's cries for help were ignored, and by morning, he was dead. At just 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighing only 103 pounds, Jorge's frail frame stood no chance against a cruel joke gone horribly wrong. How could a game turn into such a horrific crime? What secrets lay hidden behind their relationship? Join us as we uncover the chilling story of Jorge Torres Jr.'s tragic death and the shocking details of Sarah Boone's conviction that gripped the nation. When Jorge Torres Jr. and Sarah Boone began dating, it might have seemed like love could conquer anything. For about a year and a half, they shared a home in Winter Park, Florida, but their relationship was far from picture perfect. Beneath the surface, there was tension that could change their lives forever. Jorge, a petite man of 5 feet 2 inches and 103 pounds, had a history of domestic violence charges. In 2019 alone, he was charged 3 times for incidents involving Sarah. One night, after an argument over Sarah speaking to another man at a bar, things got ugly. Back at their home, they clashed violently. Sarah claimed Jorge kicked her in the eye, while Jorge said Sarah had strangled him to the point where he could barely breathe. Both accused the other of escalating the violence. But the fights didn't stop there. Over the course of their relationship, Jorge was arrested 4 times for battery against Sarah. Each time Sarah bailed him out. Once, in 2018, Sarah herself was arrested for battery by strangulation, but the charges were later dropped. It was a cycle of love and violence, leaving a dark shadow over their lives. The night of February 23, 2020 started as a regular evening for Sarah and Jorge. They were at home drinking wine together, finishing off a bottle of Chardonnay. At some point, Sarah claimed they decided to play a game of hide and seek. This moment changed everything for both of them. Sarah said she hid in the shower first, but Jorge never came to find her. After some time, she came back downstairs and found Jorge. That's when they both thought it would be funny for him to hide inside a blue suitcase they had in the living room. This suitcase wasn't empty. It had a few items they planned to donate. Jorge climbed inside and Sarah zipped it closed, laughing as they joked around. Sarah mentioned that Jorge's fingers were sticking out of the suitcase and she used a paperclip to zip it all the way shut. She believed he could easily get out if he wanted to, but then something unexpected happened. Sarah said she went upstairs, leaving the suitcase in the living room. She assumed Jorge would unzip himself. Instead, she went to bed, thinking everything was fine. Sarah woke up late the next morning around 11 a.m. to her phone ringing multiple times. She realized Jorge wasn't in bed or anywhere in the apartment. Suddenly it hit her. He might still be inside the suitcase. She rushed downstairs, unzipped the bag, and found Jorge unresponsive and not breathing. That's when panic set in. Sarah called her ex-husband Brian, begging him to come over. When he arrived, he saw Jorge and told Sarah to call 911 immediately. At 1:01 p.m., Orange County deputies arrived at the apartment. Sarah appeared frantic, telling them it was a tragic accident. She explained that she and Jorge had been playing a game and drinking. She thought Jorge had passed out from being drunk, but as investigators examined the scene, they began to doubt her story. Jorge's body was found near the front door, still inside the suitcase. Paramedics confirmed that he was dead. There were signs of a struggle. Jorge had a small cut on his lip and bruising around his eyes. These injuries raised questions about what really happened that night. That's when detectives took Sarah's statement. She repeated her story, how they had been playing a game, how she assumed Jorge could get out, and how she had no intention of hurting him. But right at that moment, the case took a darker turn. Sarah agreed to let investigators download the contents of her phone, but what they found would betray her trust in her own innocence. There were 2 videos recorded the night before, and they told a chilling story. The first video showed Jorge trapped in a suitcase, begging for help. He yelled, "I can't breathe," but Sarah could be heard laughing in the background. She mocked him, saying, "That's what you do when you choke me, and that's what I feel like when you cheat on me." She ignored his desperate cries, even telling him to shut up as he called her name. The second video showed the suitcase in a different position, as if it had been moved. Jorge's muffled voice could still be heard, pleading for Sarah to let him out, but Sarah continued laughing, showing no concern for his life. When detectives confronted Sarah with the videos, she appeared shocked. Still, she insisted it had all been an accident, but the evidence spoke louder than her words. Jorge had been left to suffocate, helpless inside the suitcase, while Sarah mocked and laughed at him. This moment changed everything, not just for Jorge, but for Sarah too. By 2:12 p.m., forensic investigators had downloaded the videos and pieced together the horrifying timeline. Jorge's death was no longer just a tragic accident, it was a homicide. On February 25, 2020, just one day after Sarah Boone's arrest, the case took a grim turn. Jorge Torres Jr.'s autopsy revealed injuries that told a different story from what Sarah had claimed. Scratches ran down his back, and a deep nail mark was found on the back of his head. There were also bruises on his left shoulder and forehead. The medical examiner noted blunt force trauma, raising questions about what really happened the night Jorge died. To make matters worse, Jorge's lip was split, showing signs of a struggle. But this wasn't all. The medical examiner concluded that Jorge had suffocated. He was trapped in that suitcase for at least 11 hours, desperately trying to free himself. Abrasions and bruises on his hands and back confirmed that he had fought to escape. This moment changed everything for investigators. What Sarah had described as a tragic accident now looked more like something intentional. Later, detectives shared these findings with Sarah in a follow-up interview. She was asked to explain Jorge's injuries, but she denied there was any physical fight. Then detectives showed her one of the videos from her phone. In this footage, Jorge could be heard begging to be let out of the suitcase. Sarah, however, laughed at his pleas. The evidence was undeniable. Sarah couldn't even watch the full 2-minute video. She said it looked bad and claimed she couldn't remember recording it. She blamed the alcohol they had consumed that night, saying it clouded her memory. But right at that moment, detectives saw through her excuses. The injuries, the videos, and the timeline didn't add up. By 8:30 p.m. that evening, Sarah Boone was officially charged with second-degree murder. The evidence spoke louder than her words, painting a dark picture of what happened. After Sarah's arrest, the legal process began. In May 2020, the Orange County medical examiner confirmed what many already suspected. Jorge's death was no accident. The medical report ruled his death a homicide, solidifying the case against Sarah, but the road to justice was anything but smooth. By January 2023, the case had already faced significant delays. Sarah's trial, initially set to begin on January 30, was postponed because her attorney had contracted COVID-19. This was just the start of many setbacks. At this hearing, Sarah's legal team also introduced a new defense strategy, claiming she was a battered spouse. They alleged that domestic violence had been a constant part of her relationship with Jorge and that her actions were a result of this abuse. In July 2023, the trial faced yet another delay. Sarah's defense requested funds for an expert to support her battered spouse claim. By this time, she had already pleaded not guilty to second-degree murder. But Sarah's behavior during the legal process made matters worse. She had gone through 8 attorneys by July 2024, each withdrawing due to irreconcilable differences. Court documents revealed that Sarah had been hostile, uncooperative, and difficult to work with. Sarah's actions towards her attorneys were shocking. She reportedly called them up to 10 times a day and made wild accusations. At one point, she even accused an attorney of using a pretend judge. Meetings often ended with her walking out or making derogatory comments. Her behavior left the court with little choice but to let her represent herself at trial. This decision was a turning point, but not in Sarah's favor. It showed just how chaotic her defense had become. In August 2024, as the trial date approached, Sarah tried once again to delay the proceedings. She brought in a new attorney, James Owens, and filed a motion to dismiss the case. Sarah claimed that her right to a speedy trial had been violated, blaming her previous attorneys for the delays. She argued that ineffective counsel had hurt her defense. However, the motion was poorly filed and quickly dismissed. It was yet another failed attempt to avoid facing the evidence against her. The court remained firm. Sarah's 3-week jury trial was set to begin on October 7, 2024. At this point, her defense strategy focused on the battered spouse claim, but the evidence told a different story. The chilling videos on her phone showed Jorge pleading for his life while Sarah mocked him. These videos, combined with the injuries on Jorge's body, painted a picture of cruelty and intent. Jorge's final hours were heartbreaking. Trapped inside the suitcase, he begged for air only to be ignored. Sarah's laughter and taunts in the videos revealed her disregard for his suffering. The case had dragged on for years, but as the trial date neared, justice for Jorge was finally within reach. After years of delays, the trial of Sarah Boone finally began in October 2024. Sarah stood accused of second-degree murder in the death of her boyfriend, Jorge Torres Jr. The trial, set in Orange County Circuit Court, marked the end of a long and complicated legal battle. The jury of 6, along with 8 alternates, was sworn in on October 14. By this time, both the prosecution and the defense were ready to present their cases. For the prosecution, this was about justice for Jorge, whose final moments were captured on Sarah's phone in 2 chilling videos. For the defense, this was about telling a different story, a story of a woman pushed to the edge by years of alleged abuse. Opening statements began on October 18. Assistant State Attorney William J. didn't hold back, describing Sarah's actions as intentional and cruel. She zipped him into the suitcase with the intent to punish him, he told the jury. And then she went to sleep, leaving him to take his final breaths alone. He also points out Sarah's lack of emotion during her 911 call, where there were no tears, no sorrow. But Sarah's defense team, led by James Owens, paints a different picture. They claimed Sarah was a victim of battered spouse syndrome, suffering years of abuse at Jorge's hands. They said her actions were a desperate response to the trauma she endured. The defense introduced witnesses and doctors' testimony to support their claims. However, the prosecution countered with evidence that Sarah never mentioned self-defense or abuse when she was first questioned by authorities. The courtroom was filled with tension as the trial unfolded. Both sides presented conflicting narratives, leaving the jury to decide which version of events to believe. Before the trial began, there were heated battles over what evidence could be used. Sarah's defense team argued that her statements during her initial 2020 interview with detectives should be excluded. They claimed Sarah felt tricked and the detective didn't properly inform her of her Miranda rights. They said she had been coerced into talking without fully understanding her rights. The judge reviewed the defense's claims, but ultimately rejected them. He ruled that the Miranda warning given to Sarah was valid, allowing her statements to be used as evidence. This was a major setback for the defense, as those statements showed Sarah offering inconsistent explanations about Jorge's death. The defense also focused heavily on their battered spouse claim. A judge allowed them to use this argument, but required Sarah to undergo an examination by a state-appointed expert. This was a critical moment for the case, as it gave the prosecution an opportunity to challenge Sarah's narrative of abuse. On October 25th, the prosecution delivered its closing arguments. Assistant State Attorney Dave Cassiatore Jr. emphasized Sarah's actions as deliberate and heartless. She zipped him into that suitcase, ignored his cries for help, and left him to die, he told the jury. After less than 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. guilty of second-degree murder.
Ms. Boone, court sentences you to life in the Department of Corrections, with credit time served that Madam Clerk will provide to you momentarily. There are also court costs and costs of prosecution, which Madam Clerk will give you the totals of momentarily. Due to the court levying a life sentence, the court is inclined to liquidate those to a civil judgment unless I hear opposition from the state.
On December 2, 2024, Sarah Boone appeared in court for her sentencing. The prosecution sought the maximum penalty, arguing that Sarah's actions were calculated and cruel. Jorge's family also spoke, sharing the pain Sarah had caused them. Victoria Torres, Jorge's sister, didn't mince words. Sarah deserved to rot in jail, she said. Her actions have brought a lifetime of pain to our family. But when it was Sarah's turn to speak, she shocked everyone. Instead of apologizing, Sarah called her time in jail one of the greatest experiences of her life. She claimed being incarcerated had allowed her to reconnect with God and focus on forgiveness. "If I wasn't beaten to death, I would have worked myself to death," she said. "This has been a blessing in disguise." Sarah didn't stop there. She doubled down on her claims of abuse, accusing Jorge of beating, kicking, and even stabbing her.
And when you forgive, you heal. And when you heal, you move forward. My goal begins with George Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked, punched, spit on, raped, stabbed, choked, laughed at, pushed, pulled, dragged, whipped, tripped, stole from, lied, terrorized, threatened, humiliated, forced, degraded, made me cry. Every time he tried to end me, defeat, or destroy.
She alleged that he had tried to make her unrecognizable by breaking the bones in her face. Sarah also criticized Jorge's family, accusing them of ignoring her suffering. "I forgive Jorge for what he did to me," she said, "but I never stopped loving him." Her words left the courtroom shocked. For Jorge's family, her statements felt like a cruel attempt to shift blame. The judge handed down the harshest sentence possible: life in prison. Sarah Boone would never walk free again.
I forgive George for beating me senseless, for trying to sleep because I had to go to work or my son's field trip the next day, for ruining my deceased family's heirlooms, traditions, and keepsakes, my son's furniture, destroying the television we watched together, for wrecking our townhome by breaking windows, punching holes in the walls and doors, ramming his entire body into glass doors, kicking in my front and back door over and over and over, for breaking or removing the locks from all of the doors and sometimes the knobs altogether, so I had nowhere to feel safe, including the sacred space of my son's room where he beat me bloody on his bed.
The case of Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres Jr. remains one of the most disturbing examples of a toxic relationship gone tragically wrong. Jorge's family was left to pick up the pieces, trying to find closure after years of pain and loss. "Sarah has taken away someone we love dearly," Victoria Torres said. "Her actions have changed our lives forever." James Owens, Sarah's ninth attorney, also reflected on the case. Speaking to the media, he acknowledged the challenges of representing her. "Sarah Boone needed a lawyer," he said. "The state has strong evidence and they proved their case." For many, this case was a haunting reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control. In the end, justice was served, but the scars of this tragedy will remain. Jorge's life ended in betrayal, and Sarah's life was forever changed by her actions. The courtroom drama, the shocking claims, and the heartbreaking loss of life are reminders of the devastating consequences of toxic relationships. Do you think justice was truly served in this case? Or was the life sentence too harsh for a woman who claims to have endured years of abuse? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on this episode. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with our next in-depth investigations on Real Crime Zone. See you in our next video.